Okay, so I guess because of that, I should start explaining myself. Um, because we kind of have a multi-step process that the church teaches when it comes to approaching magisterial documents. You have a authoritative document. This is by the DDF. The DDF is one of the few dicasteries. I think now it's the only dicastery with magisterial authority, to where their judgments actually, have a certain theological note and censure attached to it. So when there are documents, whether from, a council, from the Pope, from a dicastery, when there's an authoritative document, what are you supposed to do? So obviously, first, pull it up and you read it. And upon reading it, you may have some sort of difficulty or difficulties. Now, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to, have these difficulties. They're fine to have difficulties. And a difficulty basically is not a judgment that something is false. Rather, it's a judgment that you are not able to resolve kind of how and why something is. You're not judging that it's false yet. That's going to kind of come for later. You have this difficulty. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to attempt to remove the difficulty. The way that you remove the difficulty is you engage in a special study. So you have a few steps already that you're going in. This is all in Donum Veritatis, if you wanted to just read the whole thing, which is just a good document nonetheless. But you attempt to remove this difficulty, and let's say you still have it. At this point, it may be actually appropriate to judge that you believe something is wrong. So, let's say the death penalty section in the recent DDF document. If you engage in a study of the issues, look at the parallel. There's a lot of stuff to this. You look at the parallel documents that this is talked about. You look at the various documents that they're citing and the ones that those are citing. It may even involve, a study of the original language in which it was promulgated. This isn't something which is just, cut, dry, easy. It's going to engage in some study. And by the end of that study, I'm open to the fact, I think everybody should be open to the fact that possibly one may be in a situation where they judge it to be false. So at that point, when one judges it to be false, then what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to exercise their right in canon law to make it known to their pastors that they have this difficulty. Now, that's sort of the progression that you go into. That's the progression. Now, what you don't do, you don't read the document, have this difficulty, or look at the title of the document and have a difficulty, and then go on Twitter. And I know I mentioned Ed Fazer earlier, but I think he engaged in a little bit of this weirdness, but this was more like Kennedy Hall and guys like that. You don't just go and call it Freemasonic and demonic and Luciferian and all of this stuff. No, that's right there. That's objectively sinful behavior. It's immoral. What you're doing is immoral. And what there really needs to be, I think, is a serious methodological question. Because I am perfectly open to there being errors in papal teaching and in teaching of dicasteries. I'm open to that. I'm absolutely open to that. And I think everybody should be open to that while they're reading. But there's various things that the church calls us to do as a magisterium, which is just as a teaching authority, as a judge on matters of teaching. She demands, doesn't just nicely, she demands religious submission. That's what she demands. So if you go about this study, or if you just simply air out your personal grievances, or you really, at this point, what are we doing? Really, at this point, what are we doing? We look at the title of a magisterial document and see that it says infinite dignity and complain about that. Come on. What was really funny, I thought, is that before the document came out, who was complaining about this? I didn't see anybody complaining about it. I might be wrong, This might be a misapprehension on my part, but I didn't see anybody complaining about the title before the document came out. You know what started happening? I would say a few hours after the document came out. What does this mean? What it means is, a lot of these people, they act like women. What do women like to do? Ask her, what do women like to do? Can you answer my question, Ask?
I cannot, for some.
You cannot? You don't know what women like to do? They like to complain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, women like to complain. So a lot of these people, they act like women. I mean, let's say you make a woman a nice steak dinner, and she tastes it. Is usually the first thing she's gonna say? I mean, all the women I've ever met in the world is like, yeah, it's good, and then kind of like give a little bit of a critique of one part of it. Be like, oh, the cook was a little bit over. Oh, it needs a bit more salt, or something like that.
But
That's what women do all the time, don't they? So these guys, they're women. They're basically women. What they do is they read a magisterial document, and they need to find instantly those things in which they perhaps have, disagreements about it at first glance. And then, just like women, they go and they shout it out to the entire world. So, a few months ago, Jordan Cooper, the Mr. Jordan Cooper, the Lutheran guy, he said that the most feminine thing is submitting to Pope Francis. No, actually, the most feminine thing is just complaining about whatever Pope Francis does all the time, because that's what women do. Women are literally not apt. They're not disposed. They need to obviously learn to be disposed, but they're not disposed following our first parents to know how to submit properly to authority, like the Roman Pontiff. So really, it's a masculine endeavor to submit to our Holy Father as loyal sons of the Church. And even then, I completely think this is a methodological problem, because I could be one of the biggest critics, or like interior critics, or biggest dissenters, or somebody who disagrees the most with Pope Francis or whatever the DDF is doing, and still be in line with what the church teaches about what you ought to do in these situations. Or somebody could have just like a single problem with what something Pope Francis happened to say in a random place and break the moral guidelines on this point. It's not about the content. You guys are completely missing it if you think it's about the content. It's not about the content of what you affirm or deny. It's about the manner in which you affirm or deny. That is what's important. That's what's important. So you can I think I'm quite honest with this, and you can call me a Pope splainer, all you want. I'm quite honest with this. I tell people, I'm like, if I think Pope Francis or the DDF said something that's incorrect, that I couldn't remove by pious reading, because this is also important when it comes to teaching authority. You give it the benefit of the doubt, which a lot of these people don't do either. You give the benefit of the doubt in order to piously read. If that's impossible, I would just say, yeah, I agree. But, people actually think I'm just being dishonest by never saying that. But there actually are things that I would say that I disagree with in some lower level magisterial documents. I've found those before. And I haven't thought they're serious enough to initiate a sort of intervention with any authority. But it's absolutely, utterly not about the content of the document. It's not what it's about at all. Really, it's about the manner in which you go about agreeing or disagreeing. Yeah, and there's actually a lot of people that I really, really respected saying crazy stuff over this document. I don't know what it is about this document in particular, but who knows? Yeah, like this. This is like, yeah, the boomer neocon piety. Oh man, this is so bad. Hassan was talking about this yesterday. No, it wasn't Hassan. It was Fermion. I think it was Fermion. Or maybe it was Kayak. I can't remember. Okay, so some might recall that the original name for the war in Afghanistan was Operation Infinite Justice. and that it was changed to enduring freedom when it was realized that the phrase might sound blasphemous, given that infinite justice strictly applies only to God. Yet now we're talking about man's infinite dignity. It seems that in just 20 years, many have lost the visceral piety that once led them to recoil at such rhetorical excess. It's like the most boomer post I've ever read in my entire life. Yeah, the neocons in the early 2000s had this visceral piety when it came to justice. I don't know, bro. Why don't they just ask? I really don't get that. I have no problem with Ybarra, by the way. We're cool. I don't know. Just ask. Like, there's departments, there's like ways of asking. Just ask. You can literally just ask the DDF about things like this. Just ask. I don't get why people just don't ask. I mean, if this is like becoming okay, I'll put it like this. If this is a serious enough problem that you're willing to publicly critique your pastors, you're willing to fraternally correct, which it's kind of debated over whether laymen can even fraternally correct their pastors. But if you're willing to critique the successors of the apostles that are placed over you, you're willing to critique the vicar of Christ on earth, then you should probably do your homework beforehand. At least a study, if not, asking questions. Just ask some questions. I really don't get why everybody just kind of feels this need to assume that they have this, this really great hot take about how the title is actually just like the neocon, and it shows that Cardinal Fernandez is not as pious as George W. Bush. I don't get it. It's sometimes permissible to critique magisterial documents publicly if we are not theologians. You should just not do it. You should just not do it. I mean, just read Dunham Veritas. I'm not making this up. Just don't do it, bro. Like, why? I don't know why anybody would think that's a good. I mean, I'm not obviously like trying to be offensive or anything, but like generally speaking, I don't know why anybody would think that's a good idea. It's just not a good idea. It's like it's basically okay. I'll give you an analogy. Would you ever? I've never done this. Would you ever go in public and trash your dad? No, you'd never do it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy if you would go in public and like trash your dad, or even like most people should feel the visceral piety, to not go out and like do a full critique of something that their dad believes.
Yeah.
Like you should have a certain piety about that. Mm-hmm. So obviously, even more the spiritual fatherhood that's found in the priesthood, and especially that's found in the vicar of Christ. You should feel a visceral piety, in the words of Ed Fazer, not to go out and call his documents satanic, not to go out and talk about how Pope Francis is actually like a base Renaissance humanist or something like that. You just don't do it. You just don't do it. You can cry about it all you want. Call me Pope Splainer all you want, but this is just bad behavior. It's just bad behavior. This is a methodological point. I could hold this if I was the most radical SSPX guy in the world, and I would still hold this position. Because I have a good relationship with my father. Yeah, see, we need the Middle Eastern man right here, Astro. In your country, what do you think about people who critique their fathers in public and speak against their fathers in public?
Yeah, when people do that, like other people just don't take them seriously because they think they have never been like raised up properly in the first place. So dishonoring your fathers, like they would treat you as subhumans if you did that, because that's really bad. Because father is supposed to be the authority, like the absolute authority now, and you ought to respect them all the time.
See, guys. We need more of that Arab piety towards Pope Francis. If you critique Pope Francis, you should be seen as a subhuman.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So right here, I think there could be nuanced charitable correction if there's a public danger, but I don't know. Yeah, I think there's multiple different layers to this. This is why I didn't kind of like give a sort of universal condemnation of everybody, because I think it's clear in some cases, like when quibbling matters, or if it's like a particularly intense critique. Like that's why I gave the example of Kennedy Hall. Like that very clearly is sinful behavior right there. Like I don't think anybody in their right mind could doubt that saying stuff like that is sinful behavior. But on the other hand, like, am I gonna bind Eric Ybarra's conscience from Facebook posts that he makes, talking about realistic interpretations of various documents? I don't think it should happen, but I'm not gonna accuse him of anything. So yeah, there's obviously different degrees of gravity that go along with this, for sure.